The northern forest wrapped itself in a blanket of silence that evening, the kind of silence that made even the wind feel cautious. Snow covered the ground in pale, uneven sheets, reflecting the soft blue hue of the fading daylight. Far from the nearest village, where no road remained clear and no lamp burned after sunset, stood a lonely wooden cabin. Its walls were old but sturdy, soaked with decades of stories, laughter, winters, and storms. Inside, Grandma Lida moved slowly yet gracefully as she prepared her supper. Her silver hair, tied in a neat knot, shimmered in the firelight. Every motion she made seemed deliberate, like someone who understood patience deeply. The room smelled of herbs drying above the stove, thyme, sage, and something older, something mysterious. She stirred the pot of vegetable soup with a wooden ladle worn smooth by many winters. The fire crackled gently, the only companion she appeared to have. But the forest outside knew better. Among the thick trees, half hidden behind snow-covered bushes, 3 figures crept like shadows. Anton, the eldest Skarl brother, walked in front with the confident stride of someone used to trouble. Yuri followed, nervous and twitchy, his breath fogging in the frozen air. Stepan, the youngest and meanest, carried a crowbar and kept glancing at the cabin windows as though expecting to be seen. "There," Anton whispered, pointing at the warm glow inside the cabin. "Easy job tonight. The old woman has money hidden somewhere. These forest hermits always do." Yuri swallowed hard. "And you're sure she's alone?" "Of course she is," Stepan said with a cruel grin. "Who would visit an old witch in the middle of nowhere?" Yet the forest seemed to disagree. A low, rumbling sound echoed faintly through the trees, barely audible over the crunch of snow beneath their boots. Yuri froze. What was that? "Probably a deer," Anton muttered, though uncertainty flickered in his eyes. They moved closer, step by silent step. The cabin's warm glow looked inviting, vulnerable. To them it was an easy score. To the forest, it was a trap they were too foolish to see. Inside, Grandma Lida paused, her hand hovering over the pot. She lifted her head slowly, as if listening to something no human ear could hear. A small, knowing smile touched her lips. "They're here," she whispered softly. And she wasn't talking to herself. The bandits circled the cabin, with the slow confidence of men who believed they controlled the night. Snowflakes drifted lazily from the dark sky, settling on their shoulders as they positioned themselves around the wooden structure, the warm orange light glowing through. The window only emboldened them. Further, comfort, safety, and an elderly woman who would never fight back. At least that's what they imagined. Anton pressed his back against the wall beside the door. His gloved hand tightened around the handle of his knife. "Yuri, take the window."
"Stepan, you're with me."
"Don't waste time." Yuri, still trembling from the strange growl he'd heard earlier, hesitated before nodding. He raised the butt of his pistol and, with a sharp exhale, smashed it against the glass. The window shattered instantly, sending icy shards flying across the cabin floor. Flames from the fireplace flickered wildly from the rush of cold air. Inside, Grandma Lida didn't flinch. She merely turned her head, watching the chaos unfold with calm, steady eyes that seemed far too fearless for a woman her age. Stepan stormed in first, kicking the door open with a violent crack. The hinges groaned in protest as the door slammed against the wall. Anton followed, knife raised, expecting screams, panic, or desperate begging. He got none of it. Grandma Lida stood perfectly still by her wooden table, her hands resting lightly on the surface. She looked more annoyed than frightened, as though they had interrupted her evening rather than threatened her life. "Where's the money, old woman?" Stepan barked, chest heaving with adrenaline. Lida's voice was soft, almost kind. "You boys don't want to do this." Anton snarled. "Don't play games with us. Tell us where your savings are." Lida tilted her head slightly. "I said nothing about games. I am warning you for your own sake." A cold draft swept through the cabin, extinguishing 2 candles. Darkness deepened in the corners of the room. From the back hallway, a heavy thud echoed, then another, slow, deliberate, like footsteps of something too big to be human. Yuri's voice cracked. What is that?" Grandma Lida smiled gently as if comforting a frightened child. "My companion," she answered. "You should have left while you had the chance." The shadows behind her stretched, shifted, and something massive began to move. For a moment, the cabin held its breath. The fire crackled weakly, fighting against the growing darkness. The bandits stood frozen, their bravado leaking away like water through cracked stone. Every sound in the cabin felt amplified, their breathing, The creak of the wooden floor, the whisper of the wind slipping through the broken window. Then it came again. Thud, a slow, powerful step. Not rushed. Not nervous. Purposeful. Anton raised his knife with trembling hands, scanning the cabin's dim interior. Who's back there? Show yourself. But whatever was moving didn't respond. It didn't need to. Its presence alone filled the room like a tightening fist. The silhouette grew larger as it approached the doorway of the back hall. A broad shoulder emerged first, brushing the frame. Then another. The bandit's eyes widened as the figure ducked slightly to fit through the wooden arch. Candlelight flickered across his form, revealing immense muscles, thick as rope and hardened by war and winter. The man was enormous, towering, built like a boulder carved into human shape. His beard was dark and heavy, partially hiding a jaw sharp enough to intimidate even in silence. A wolf pelt cloak draped across his shoulders, the fur still intact, as though he had taken it from the beast himself. Grandma Lida sighed, almost relieved. There you are, Ivan. The bandits flinched. Ivan? Yuri squeaked. That's a person? A person, Lida echoed with pride. My grandson. Ivan stepped fully into the room now. His eyes, cold, sharp, military, landed on the intruders without emotion. He didn't need to ask what was happening. The broken window, the kicked-in door, his grandmother standing calmly before three armed men. It was all painfully clear. He cracked his knuckles slowly. Each pop sounded like a bone snapping in the silence. Anton lowered his knife a fraction. We didn't know anyone else was here. Ivan's voice was deep and steady. You should have knocked. Yuri stumbled backward, tripping over a stool and landing hard on the floor. Stepan tried to raise his crowbar, but his arms shook so violently he could barely hold it. Ivan moved with terrifying speed for someone his size. In one stride, he reached Stepan and ripped the crowbar from his grip as though taking a toy from a child. The metal bent slightly in his hand. Stepan screamed. Ivan's shadow swallowed all three brothers as he towered over them. You came to rob my grandmother, he said quietly, dangerously. Now you answer to me. The moment Ivan stepped toward them, the very air inside the cabin seemed to change, heavier, colder, as if danger itself had taken physical form. The bandits, who only an hour ago bragged about how easy this robbery would be, now looked like scared boys who had wandered too deep into a monster's den. Anton tried to keep his voice steady. We just want to leave. No trouble. Ivan's massive frame loomed over him, casting a shadow that swallowed the flickering firelight. You brought trouble, he replied quietly. And now you want to walk away? Before Anton could answer, Ivan lunged. He moved like a storm, fast, violent, unstoppable. His hand closed around Anton's wrist, twisting the knife from his grip with a single fluid motion. The knife clattered across the floor and embedded itself into a wooden beam. Anton screamed as he was flung backwards onto the table, splintering the edge under his weight. Yuri scrambled to his feet, slipping on the shattered glass beneath him. In desperation, he grabbed the iron poker by the fireplace and swung wildly. Ivan didn't even flinch. He caught the poker mid-swing and yanked it so hard that Yuri spun twice before collapsing onto the floor in a heap. Grandma Lida watched from the side, not horrified, not panicked, but calm, the way a shepherd watches a dog chase away wolves. Stepan, the youngest but the most vicious of the brothers, roared and charged with the fury of someone cornered. He tackled Ivan with all his strength, but it was like running into a wall of granite. Ivan didn't budge. Instead, he wrapped one arm around Stepan's chest and lifted him clean off the ground. Stepan's feet dangled helplessly. Put me down. Put me down. Ivan did, by slamming him onto the snow-covered floor outside the cabin. The impact sent a puff of white powder into the air. Stepan coughed, gasping like a fish thrown onto dry land. Yuri crawled toward the door, dragging himself with shaking arms. Ivan kicked the door wider and dragged both remaining brothers outside, tossing them into the snow like discarded sacks of grain. The cold bit at their bruised skin, but the fear running through their veins was far more chilling. You ever come near her again, Ivan said, his voice low and thunderous, and I will not stop at broken bones. Grandma Lida stepped into the doorway, arms crossed. Go home, boys, and be grateful he stopped when he did. The bandits nodded frantically, too terrified to speak. They had come for an old woman. They left knowing they had barely survived her guardian. Morning crept slowly over the forest, laying a pale golden glow across the snow-covered trees. The cold air felt gentler now, as if the woods themselves were relieved the night's violence had passed. Birds ventured out of their nests again, chirping cautiously as they tested the stillness around Grandma Lida's cabin. Far from the peaceful scene, 3 battered shapes stumbled along the narrow path leading back to the village. The Skaroff brothers moved like broken marionettes, faces bruised, clothes torn, pride shattered beyond repair. Every now and then one of them would look behind nervously, as if expecting the giant to emerge from the trees again. Villagers gathering outside. The bakery stopped, in shock as the brothers limped into view. Children pointed. Adults whispered. Even the dogs backed away, sensing the strange mixture of fear and humiliation radiating off the 3 men. "What happened to you?" Old man Petrov demanded, wide-eyed. Anton, still pale from terror, shook his head rapidly. Don't go near the old woman's cabin," he croaked. "Why, did she hex you?" Someone joked. Yuri's voice cracked. "She doesn't live alone." The crowd leaned closer. "What do you mean?" Stepan swallowed, his lips trembling. "Her grandson. He's a monster, huge, like a bear wearing a man's skin. He threw us around like we were nothing," Anton added, still shaking. "We're lucky to be alive." Whispers spread fast. Within an hour, the entire village knew. Grandma Lida was protected. Fiercely, dangerously protected. And so, what had once been seen as an isolated, vulnerable home was now viewed as the last place anyone with a brain should ever approach uninvited. Back in the forest, the cabin stood quiet again. Inside, the fire crackled warmly. Grandma Lida poured 2 cups of steaming birch tea and placed one in front of Ivan. Despite his enormous size and warrior's aura, he held the delicate cup with surprising gentleness. "You handled yourself well last night," she said, though her eyes twinkled as if she expected nothing less. Ivan took a sip. "They shouldn't have come here." Lida nodded calmly. "They won't return. Fear travels faster than footsteps." Outside the window, a deer strolled past, unafraid. The forest had accepted peace again. Ivan leaned back in his chair, the wooden frame creaking under his weight. "If anyone else comes?" Grandma Lida smiled softly. "Then they'll learn what those boys learned, that this old woman is never truly alone."